You need to know about this. You need to know about it. All right, so crypto, blockchain, Web3, NFTs. In this episode, I want to demystify this stuff. All right, I want to tell you why I'm excited about it and why you need to know about it. Guys, Howard Kingston here, entrepreneur, marketer, and co-founder of Growth Velocity Academy. And this episode, I want to talk about the future. Now, normally, this is a bit of a different episode, all right? So normally I love talking about marketing, entrepreneurship, personal development, stuff like that. And you know what? This does fit into this stuff. This is the next bounce of the ball. This is the future, what's coming up. And I did a poll recently in our members group in my academy. Oh, these are all people who are like, you know, running marketing, got businesses, stuff like that. Who here has kind of knows quite a bit about cryptocurrency, about stuff like that? And very few people actually do. Now, over the last month or two, I've been going really, really deep on this stuff. Now, I wish, like so many others, I got into this stuff. Like I remember, I forget the year. It was when we started at Ludio, my advertising business. I was in London and we just had an office. It was just there's this section of East London called Brick Lane. It's a really cool area. I remember being in an office there, and I remember at the time Bitcoin was just kind of like getting started to be talked about for the very first time. And there's a developer called Ben that we had, super smart guy, and he was getting into Bitcoin mining. Now this is probably 10 years ago, like maybe 6 years, 7 years ago. So maybe kind of like 2014 kind of time. I forget the exact year. And yeah, probably not 10 years ago. I'd say more like 2014, 2015 kind of time. And he was getting into Bitcoin mining. He was explaining it. Some of the other developers were getting into it. We had another developer who was really early on a different coin called Dogecoin. And I had the chance back then to kind of get into this stuff, and I went, I've got enough stuff on building my business. Didn't look at it. All right, so I've been kind of getting into this stuff later than I'd like to. I wish I got back into it then, but I think everyone has that story, don't they? But I'm big into it now. And in this episode, I want to break down some things that I think you know about, all right? You might have heard of NFTs. If you haven't, I'm going to talk about it. Or you might have heard of Web3. If you haven't, I'm going to talk about it. The Metaverse. And a little bit on cryptocurrencies. I'm going to talk about that stuff in this episode. Why? Because I think it's important for you, all right? I think it's really, really important. So let's get into it. So the first thing I want to say about the future is you got to understand the past to know the future, what's happening with crypto, okay? So with crypto, the future and the past, we need to understand this. So I want to talk about a little bit of an evolution of the internet here. So there's something happening you may have heard of called Web3, okay? So Web3, this is the first thing I want to talk about. Now, to know about Web3, let's go back in time a little bit. What was Web 1, right? Web 1 was the first evolution of the internet, maybe in the like early, kind of like 1997, whatever that was. The first internet came out, and of course there was internet around before that actually, but it started kind of getting popular and stuff around 1997. And Web 1 was like the first websites that, I remember having dial-up on my computer, and Web 1 was really, it was the equivalent of someone getting a magazine, all right? And magazines, getting a magazine and putting it on the internet. Like, that's really all it was. They were actually called brochure websites back then. And it was just like a series of pages that you could read. And the kind of functionality after that was pretty limited. You could email people, you could have a contact form, but like they weren't very interactive, right? There was a little bit of fancy, like occasionally you have some really fancy graphics and stuff, but they're pretty one-dimensional, okay? Or maybe, actually two-dimensional, all right? So they're pretty standard. So that was Web 1.0. Now, the big evolution that came from that was Web 2.0, which came out in about 2005. And this is really where social media came in, and people being able to interact with each other on scale. All right. Facebook, Twitter, Snap, all these kind of things started coming out all around then, over a period of maybe, a decade. And this is everything that started coming in Web 2. Now, an important point of Web 2 that to understand is, you'll see, and I'll connect the dots on this in a few minutes, is that these are all super interactive websites, however, that you can interact with other people socially, and that's really what Web 2 is. But the really important thing is to know is that these are all centrally owned businesses, all built on a central database. All right, so Facebook is built on a certain database from Facebook HQ. All right, Twitter is as well. Even MySpace was. Snap would be as well. All right, so one business owns all. When I say a database, I mean they own, one person owns all the information in this one centralized kind of property. Okay, they hold the keys to it all. Okay, now what's Web 3? All right, so Web 3 is really you'll hear a word coming up a lot called decentralization. All right. And decentralization is, rather than like one organization owning all the information, or one organization like owning all the information like Facebook do. Facebook owns all the information on the Facebook platform, or even a bank. A bank owns all the information on about your personal information, right? It owns all of that, and you trust it. Now, Web3 is about the decentralization of all of that. So what that means is that rather than one organization owning it all, it's distributed across what's really called the blockchain. Okay, so you may have heard of this thing called blockchain, and that's really what it is. It's this distribution, decentralization of all this information, which is stored on rather than it being stored by one organization, it's stored by dozens, hundreds, thousands of computers around the world. All of them have a copy of the information, okay, on what's called the blockchain, okay, a chain of information, okay, and it means, and all of them have identical copies. So if one person came and like changed the information on one computer, all the other computers would go, hold on, no, that's not right. That's not right, because we all have this original copy. We all have this information that says this one thing. If one computer just decided to change a figure in an amount, it makes it very very secure for that reason. All right, so one person could go onto one computer and change put 10 zeros onto the amount that they have in their bank account, but all the other computers around the world that have the same information would go, oh, hold on, no, that's been tampered with. So can you see that's why blockchain, they talk about blockchain being very secure. All right, now, so this is kind of what Web3 is. Web3, which you'll hear more and more as a term coming out, is all about the decentralization of these things that always used to be very, very centralized. All right, now, probably the most famous example of that people have heard about the most, that is the biggest use case of Web3 and decentralization and blockchain, is cryptocurrencies. Now, cryptocurrencies are not, the only use of blockchain. It's probably the first, close to mass market. I still don't think it's mass market yet, but it's the closest thing to mass market use of blockchain to date. Okay, they're currencies which, rather than let's say Bitcoin, for example, is one that's everyone has heard of. Cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, rather than you holding all your money in a bank, and that bank, by the way, you'll see how much profit they make. You see how much it costs for them to have all these retail banks all around their country. Like they've a huge cost base, right? And they're paying their members like fat salaries. The CEOs are always some of the highest paid people. Well, you see, Bitcoin doesn't really have that, right? And cryptocurrencies don't really have that. The information is stored on the blockchain, which is, I've just explained, is actually quite a secure thing. And if someone tries to tamper with it, everyone can see, and it's kind of like almost self-regulating in that way. So cryptocurrency is just one of the first examples that are being used in the world of blockchain. And the most famous cryptocurrencies out there, Bitcoin, I think we've all heard of Bitcoin. Ethereum is probably the second most famous one. So they'd be known as what's called the two biggest blue chip cryptocurrencies. And in my cryptocurrency portfolio, I own almost like 90, even more than that, percent Bitcoin and Ethereum. Okay, there's thousands more types of cryptocurrencies. Okay, there's thousands more. So they're all what's called altcoins. Okay, alternative coins, and they're all a bit more. They're all different in their own different ways, right? But they wouldn't be as, say, blue chip as Bitcoin and Ethereum, okay? And as a result, they'd be far more volatile, all right? If you think of like cryptocurrencies anyway, like even Bitcoin is very volatile, but in the great scheme of things, Bitcoin would be quite, would be far more kind of like, that's why they call it blue chip. It'd be far more kind of like less volatile compared to some of these other altcoins. Okay. I only own a little bit of altcoins at the moment, although I am going to invest more in them as I research them more. But I could talk about that, my personal investment kind of philosophy, another time if there's interest. But so that's the first thing I want to talk about. That's what Web3 is. Web3, let's go back to the first principle here, that Web3 is the decentralization of everything. Okay. So that's the first thing to talk about. Okay. So the second thing I want to talk about then is NFTs. All right. So you may have heard of this thing called an NFT before. It's been in the news a lot, this year. And NFT stands for a non-fungible token. All right. So it basically means a digital asset, a digital thing, right? What is an asset? It could be like a picture. It could be anything really, a song. But I think the most easy one to understand is a image. All right, a digital image. So a digital thing or a digital image. And if you think about it, like a digital image, if you think about an image, right? If it's a physical image, like a piece of art, there's a way to tell which was the original piece of art, like the Mona Lisa. Okay, there's a way to do that. Okay, now, and then there's lots of copies of the Mona Lisa around the world, right? There's almost, probably millions of copies of the Mona Lisa around the world, from posters to prints to people painting it, etc. But we all know which is the Mona Lisa, the original one, and obviously the original one has the most value. Okay, I think we're all agreed with that. Now, what NFTs are a digital representation of that Mona Lisa example. Okay, so there has never really been before a way to, in the digital world, to go, no, that's the original. All right. Now, of course, you can more easily than in the physical world, create copies of digital things. Now, all you have to do is right click and press copy. It's so easy. But there's never before been a way to say that's the original one. Okay. And that's what an NFT is. All right. And how an NFT certifies its originality is using something called a smart contract, which is tied to, guess what? The blockchain. Yeah, what we've just been talking about before. Okay, so that's how it's a smart contract which certifies its originality through a process called minting. So you mint an NFT, you say this is the original one, and because it's the original, even of a digital asset, a digital piece of art, they're worth a lot of money now. And some of the figures of some of the most expensive NFTs are staggering. So some ones I would recommend you check out. It's even just for curiosity's sake, please check out CryptoPunks. So they're like the original, the OG of NFTs. They were kind of like thought of as some of the first ones. And the most expensive CryptoPunk was sold for $500 million, like crazy money right now. And other ones I recommend you check out is do look up something called the Bored Ape Yacht Club. The Bored Ape Yacht Club. Again, a collection of NFTs. I think there was about 10,000 of them made, and now they're going for huge amounts. Like even there's a very famous art auction in London called Christie's. It'd be one of the most famous ones in the world. They are now selling these NFTs, these digital NFTs, and one sold for over $2 million in London, a few months ago. So this is all really, really hot stuff. Now you might kind of go, that's crazy. Why would people spend so much for the original of a digital thing? Why do they care? Well, you see, this is where the world is going. All right. And, this is like, the world is becoming more and more digital. Now we want a way to be able to, for a lot of people, having the original in digital format is as valuable as having something in physical. Okay. Which leads me nicely to the third part, which is the metaverse. Okay, the third thing that I really think you should know about is the metaverse. Now, the metaverse, you may have some concept of hearing about this metaverse recently because of Facebook renaming the company to Meta. Okay, now the Meta, like Facebook doing that, is really a nod to they see where everything is going. And a few years ago, Facebook bought a virtual reality company called Oculus Rift, okay, for, a lot of money, probably $1 billion, maybe more. And so they did that. And that was like this kind of renaming their company to Meta is really a nod towards where they see things going, because they see the metaverse becoming more and more prevalent in the future years. Now, Meta is not, Facebook's Meta company is not the metaverse. They do not own the metaverse. The metaverse is not ownable. It's like the planet Earth. No one owns it. The metaverse is a collection of virtual worlds. Okay. And many people are building worlds within the metaverse right now. So the best way to explain that is if you have ever heard or watched the movie or read the book called Ready Player One. All right. If you haven't, I really recommend reading that book, guys. It's showing you what's going to happen in the future. I really recommend it. The movie I wasn't mad on, I'll be honest. The book blew my mind. Highly recommend it. So the metaverse is really about kind of showing what that is. Okay, and the metaverse is about that collection of worlds, and a lot of people are building these kind of worlds in there right now. And the metaverse is the place where people are going to be spending more and more time. It's like those virtual reality worlds. And where this gets interesting and where the dots start connecting, guys, is imagine in a virtual world, like even now, a lot of teenagers spend about half of their life on digital worlds. Like my nephew spends most of his day in Fortnite. All right, computer game. And that is where a lot of people in the world are going to be spending about half of their life, at least, in these virtual worlds. So why would they not value things in these virtual worlds just as much as they value them in the physical world? Why would they not? I read this week a piece of news dropped that someone bought a virtual yacht in one of these virtual worlds for $650,000. Now, and one game that I helped launch a few years ago was also a virtual world, but on a much smaller case. And in that, we actually sold virtual yachts too, and we sold one for I think it was $1,500. And I remember that at the time, like that would really blew people's minds. But it just shows you that has just even continued now. That people are buying real world things in these games, okay, and they're spending real world money. And let's connect the dots now, because as you can see, as people are spending more time in the metaverse, that people will want to, imagine you in the metaverse, you go into a virtual world and you have an avatar, and you walk into a virtual room and someone has a virtual painting on the wall. And you're at a virtual party, for example, in someone's virtual home and in this virtual world. And you walk into the virtual party and up on the wall, they have a virtual CryptoPunk piece of art. Okay. And you know, because it has a sign on it, it's the original. Just like if you walked into a house and you saw the original of the Mona Lisa in the real world today, you'd be like super impressed, right? You'd be like, whoa, this person must be a baller. Well, exactly the same thing will happen in the metaverse. These original pieces of art, it's like they're right now what's being printed. These NFTs are like the Renaissance period in classical art. That all these classics are being created, which will be the originals and be worth huge amounts of money. And that's what's happening. So hopefully I'm connecting the dots here. Why NFTs with NFT, why these NFTs with Web3, I should say, is the future. All right. So guys, in this episode, I have gone really deep and talking about some new stuff. Now, some of you, you might be going, I did not know what he was talking about. I've tried to compress some really big things, some things that hopefully will bend your brain. If you actually go, like, I don't know what he's been talking about, re-listen to it, listen to this one again, get your head around it, because you as a leader, you have to push yourself here. You don't want to be like, so, every generation people get left behind. Every generation people go, oh, that's not really going to happen. Every generation they go, oh, that's a fad. That's not going to change me. I don't believe in that stuff. And then guess what? It happens. They even said that about the internet, right? They said, oh, the internet's not going to happen. It's a fad. Get ahead of this. You're a leader. You need to get ahead of what's happening here. And that means you're going to have to learn some stuff. You're going to have to put yourself out of your comfort zone and kind of get your head around this. Otherwise, you're going to get left behind. If you're interested, I will do more episodes on this because I'm really geeking out on this whole subject at the moment. I'm really excited about it, and I hope you are too. Okay, guys. So as always, if you want some more help, I run trainings every single week. There's a link in the episode notes where you can get access to our free training, or if you want a free one-on-one call with one of my marketing coaches to talk about your career, talk about your strategies, just book in a call as well. There's a link below, completely complimentary. I will see you in the next episode.